Katanga, Shriners and Altar Boys. Continuing with Alan, Static Traveller's thread that he's done 5 LPs that you wouldn't find in one of those ghastly books that you see in airports, aren't they? 1001 albums that you should definitely have in your collection. I mean, let's be honest, there's vinyl community videos like that, aren't there? And they have these ridiculous titles like, you know, records you should have in your collection. And when you look at them, they're always dreadful. They're things I wouldn't let through the tradesman's entrance, ladies and gentlemen, let alone through the front door. Really dreadful drivel. Anyway, let's get on, shall we? My first LP, musically, I've done the spoken word, 5 musical albums. My first one is going to be a record that was an enormous influence on me. So, without further ado, let me show you this. Now, one night, I told this story before to Madam Sin viewers that when I was 12, my uncle sat me down and introduced me to the blues. This is one of the records he played me, and this is my introduction to Slim Harpo and Lazy Lester. So it was an incredibly important record for me, and really was a life-changing one. So these are records that were really just an enormous influence on me. Now, back in the 70s, you couldn't find any Screamin Jay. You could get a reissue of I Put a Spell on You, no problem. You couldn't find much else. And before that album came out on Ed Saw Demon in the 80s, there really wasn't a decent compilation. Except there was this one. And I know it's not an exciting cover and all that, but honestly, when I got, let me just show you what the tracks are. When I got this as a schoolboy, I was absolutely thrilled. Thrilled I was, unbelievable. And to this day, there's records on there that, like Hong Kong, that just are just in the ether now. For some reason they've disappeared, but it's like one of my favourite records of all time. And in that vein, of course, this man, and this was a record I got from, they used to call him Dave the Dork, and he used to have a record shop called House of Wax. Good name for a record shop. House of Wax up in Kentish Town. And I went in there one day. This is the first English LP, by the way, by Bo Diddley. You know, it was one of those things, if you were hip, you could have bought that in your local record shop. And Dave had that, and he had the London EP. And I went in there that day and I said, have you got any Bo Diddley? And he said, no, but I've got a couple of things I'm taking to a record fair. I said, well, what are they? He said, I've got the London LP. And I said, and he said, the EP. I said, well, where are they then? He said, he lived locally. I said, well, go and get them. And that was £33 for the LP and £12 for the EP. Shows you how long ago that was. But Bo Diddley was just my hero at school. So, moving on, this record used to be in Woolworths. They used to sell this in Woolworths. You could get this everywhere. This was in all the record shop windows. It was the first thing you saw when you looked in a, you know, section of reggae or something, and it was this, again, not an exciting cover, I know, but let me just show you the records on the back of that. And these were, you know, these were life-changing records as a kid, these tighten-ups, because you basically got all these singles that you couldn't possibly have got all these singles, you know, and here they were on these fantastic albums, you know, and just with a little bit of underboob on that one, which is always nice, isn't it? And this last one was just, I can't even estimate how big an influence this was on me, but I got this on must have been 11 or 12, I think. And this was my introduction to all these people on the back. Just there's the listing, right? Now you have a look at that. Now the only two records I had on there were Tutti Frutti and Roll Over Beethoven, and I had to take a punt on the other ones, right? And this was my introduction to Little Willie John, the Cadets, the Cadillacs, the Five Satins, Bill Doggett, Frankie Lyman, the Teen Queens, you know, all that stuff, man. Just fantastic. And these wonderful, can't remember the guy now, you can look him up, I think his name's Mike, but the guy did these, yeah, Mike Royer. The guy did these fantastic covers, and that was just such an influence on me, the Cruisin albums. And that was the first one that I got. So there's 5 albums that definitely won't be in there. I mean, yeah, you know, okay, they might have the Trojan one. They might have. They tend not to have black music in those books, don't they? It's all sort of, I won't say them, you know, dreadful people. But anyway, Alan, I hope you enjoyed those 5 musical ones for you that won't be in those ghastly books. And good thread. There's been some really interesting ones. I've watched all of them as far as I know. So we'll see you again, ladies and gentlemen. Take care.